Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, July the 17th. And welcome to our commentary. I have a post over at the American Thinker today, Friday, called Arrivederci Little Italy. Um, Trying out my little Italian there, what little I know, to talk about what just happened in New York City, where they drew a map of the city. And I guess they were trying to divide the city by little groups of people and little communities. So they had little Pakistan, little Yemen, little Somalia, but they forgot to put little Italy. Now, I don't have a problem with including all those other groups. I know that there are other groups who live in New York City, and that's fine, recognizing whatever contribution they make on. I don't mind that at all. But to somehow forget about putting the Italian or at least recognizing the influence of the Italians in New York City, I mean, that's more than an oversight. That's almost criminal. You just don't forget something like Italy. I mean, my gosh, the influence of the Italians in that city, not just in that city, but New Jersey and some of the other places. I mean, my gosh, I mean, the Italians had tremendous influence in the history of New York City and the character of the city and the history of the city. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, obviously there was a lot of objection from the Italian community there. The Italian American community, pretty significant in that area. And they, eventually the mayor had to say, well, I'm not sure who made the mistake or whatever. But, we also did find out that the mayor at one time was demonstrating against Columbus or the Columbus statue. He wanted to bring that down. So look, I'm not saying that the mayor himself decided to exclude the Italians from the city or the picture of the city or the little map of the city that they made, but obviously somebody did. And I don't think it's an accident. I think what is happening to the Democrat Party is that more and more, many of these groups are having influence on the so-called Democrat socialists, and they're more likely to have something in common with people from some of these other cultures and Italians, because Italians, after all, are Catholics and more conservative people. So I don't know what's going to happen, whether they're going to correct it, but it's become a real mess for the mayor, and he's got a few other messes as well going on, including the number of businesses just saying enough is enough and packing up and leaving because of all the crazy politics of that city. So Little Italy was omitted from the history of the city. That's, again, I don't think it was an accident. I think it was done on purpose. It was done on purpose. And this is something, by the way, and I'll say this because I mentioned it in my post. This is something that communists do. I mean, I remember seeing that in Cuba, where they basically reinvented Cuban history to project something totally different from what Cuba was before Castro. So they created this little image of a third world country run by casinos, and everybody was poor and everybody was starving. So a communist revolution had to happen to save the island from, the terrible American colonialism. Well, that's not the story of Cuba, of course. I'm not suggesting the island didn't have problems, but not those kinds of problems. In fact, there was a lot more prosperity in Cuba than you would believe. And there was actually a pretty good middle class in Cuba, the byproduct of many good economic policies before Castro. So, but my point is that this is something communists do. They rewrite history, and they do it so they can justify whatever they're selling you. So, I closed my post by saying that somebody in the Democrat Party is going to have to stand up to these people and say enough is enough. I hope so, because these people are not going anywhere, and they're growing within the Democrat Party. Well, I have a post coming out Saturday morning about what just happened in Maine. As you know, the guy who had won the primary, a fellow named Planter, had to resign because of all kinds of problems in his background and all that kind of stuff. Not very nice problems, to say the least. So now they're having a process or a debate to see who's going to replace him. And I'm telling you, that debate turned into a clown show. I mean, it is absolutely incredible to me what is happening to the Democrat Party, with how they just seem to attract, people that, believe me, not long ago would have never been able to get ahead in the Democrat Party. I mean, just if you get a chance, just watch a little bit of that debate and you'll see what I'm talking about. Some of the freaks who are running for office is just beyond me. And the other thing that you saw in that debate is how unwilling the candidates who are trying to replace Mr. Planter, how unwilling they are to really break with him, because they're obviously scared to death that the people who voted for Mr. Planter are going to stay home or may not vote at all or vote for somebody else, like an independent or write-in, whatever option, not vote Democrat. But there's no question from this debate up in Maine that Susan Collins won the debate. She wasn't there, of course, but she was watching it like everybody else. And it's just hard to believe that this is the state that gave us people like George Mitchell, Olympia Snowe, just a couple of recent senators from that state who were very serious people. Again, it's not about political party. I mean, George Mitchell was kind of a centrist Democrat, liberal Democrat, and Olympia Snowe was more of a centrist right Republican, but they were both serious people, like Susan Collins. They're serious people. And that's what's missing in the Democrat Party in these primaries. That's exactly what's missing. Well, I saw the speech last night, President Trump's speech. I saw parts of it live, but I then watched a video of it later to make sure that I had, seen the whole thing. He spoke for about 27 minutes. And look, I thought he gave a pretty good speech about this problem of foreign interference in our elections. But unfortunately, some of the networks decided not to carry the speech, which I think is very unfortunate. I think NBC and ABC made that call. Very unfortunate. I mean, look, I know they have other programming and they have other maybe cable networks where people can watch it, but these networks have licenses, and part of that license is they have to work in the public service. And I think omitting the president of the United States is not working in the public service. So I think that was a big mistake by those networks not carrying him. Now, as far as the speech, and the speech was you can still watch the speech on Fox and the cable news and whatever. I mean, it wasn't like you couldn't watch the speech. But I thought the speech was pretty good. I think he spoke about problems that we have with our elections. He pointed out, for example, that there's like 250,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote. That's a problem. That's a problem in a close election. I think he also spoke about, like California, where it takes weeks to count votes. I mean, it's ridiculous, totally ridiculous. They had elections in Colombia, they had elections in Peru, and they had elections in Chile, Costa Rica. We call these third world countries, but yet we knew at 10 o'clock who had won the election. Now, in Peru, they had to wait a few days to count votes from overseas. But 97, 98% of the vote had already been counted by 10 o'clock on election day. And there's no reason why California cannot do the same thing and other states can do the same thing like we do here in Texas. We know by 9 o'clock, at least 89, 90% of the vote is counted. So that's why they're able to make these calls, because they have most of the vote in and they can anticipate who's going to win the election. So I think that we have some problems, and the Democrats ought to work with the Republicans and try to find some solutions. I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's an American issue. And I think both sides need to work to get it fixed. There are reasons to be concerned because of all the technology and machines and all of that. And we do have adversaries. We do have people who don't like us and want to do us harm. So, let's get realistic about this rather than just blaming Trump for everything, which is unfortunately what so many people in the country do these days. Well, I'm going to go back in history to this day, July 17th, 1980. And this was the day that President Reagan formally accepted the Republican nomination. Well, at the time, he was Governor Reagan. And he accepted the nomination and delivered a fantastic speech. One of the greatest, I think, nomination acceptance speeches that I have ever seen or heard. Just absolutely fantastic. I cannot remember one as good as that one since or before. He was just absolutely electric and on target, obviously. And, Reagan was a great speaker. What can I say? But he delivered one of his greatest speeches on this day in 1980, accepting the Republican nomination. Of course, he would go in to win the election and defeat then incumbent President Carter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good weekend, everybody.